My name is Russ Deyo. Until Inauguration Day, I was the Acting Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. I took on that role after I retired from Johnson & Johnson, where I was for 27 years and served as the General Counsel. It's a real honor to be with all of you today. I'm sure for many of you, and certainly for me, yesterday was an incredibly emotional day to see firsthand the horrors of the Holocaust. Not comparable in scale, but as a number of speakers have talked about, crimes against humanity have continued since then. And today we live in a world with many vulnerable populations in virtually every country of the world. We live in a world with rising hate speech, rising hate crime, increasing number of hate atrocities, and we need to do everything we can do to prevent them. These problems are exacerbated by communications between like-minded individuals on the internet. It's deeply concerning, and we need to do everything we can to protect vulnerable populations and prevent violence to them. As has been discussed, we need to speak out. We need to educate. But please also think if there are other things you can do in your communities to prevent, in a proactive way, this kind of atrocity to vulnerable populations. It's appropriate that we close today's events with a distinguished panel who will discuss best practices and legal issues relating to protecting vulnerable populations and preventing acts of violence in a proactive way. You will hear from each of them, and then hopefully we'll have time for some questions. You'll first hear from John Farmer, who you all know and needs no introduction. What a distinguished career, not only at Rutgers Law School, but serving as the Attorney General of New Jersey, working on the 9/11 Commission and being one of the primary authors of that report. He will provide an overview of the activities of the Miller Center for Community Protection and Resilience, and you heard from Paul Miller earlier today. Next, you'll hear from Paul Goldenberg, who is the president and CEO of Cardinal Point Strategies. What a distinguished career this gentleman has had. 2 decades in law enforcement, followed by doing everything he can do to provide guidance and counsel to people at risk, to populations at risk around the globe. No one travels as much as Paul. He gets a call, he responds to provide guidance and assistance to prevent bad things from happening to communities. I know him firsthand because he serves on the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Advisory Committee. It's a presidential appointment. He was appointed for a second term, which underscores how his guidance is valued. He worked on countering violent extremism and served as vice chair of the department's faith-based committee. So I know firsthand the benefit and value of his guidance and counseling. He's here today to give an overview of the efforts to prevent violence to vulnerable communities in the United States. Next, you'll hear from Elie Honig. Elie has a very tough job. He's the director of the New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice. He basically has oversight in New Jersey for all state criminal prosecutions. Before he took on that daunting role, he was a federal prosecutor in the Southern District of New York, which is in New York City. He prosecuted mafia crimes and many other crimes. So he has a broad and meaningful experience, and he will discuss the efforts and programs in New Jersey to protect vulnerable communities. And last but not least, Jonathan Bierman. Jonathan is a Belgian lawyer. He served as advisor to the President of the Belgian Senate, to the Foreign Minister, and other senior political officials on the fight against intolerance and anti-Semitism. He's an elected member of the Brussels City Council, and he and his family have been involved for years in the Jewish community in Brussels. He led the effort to create a crisis plan and is the executive director of the crisis cell for the Jewish community. He will discuss prevention efforts in Brussels, which is one of the best examples of a best practice, proactively connecting private entities and governmental organizations working collaboratively in a way that really makes a difference. Is there anything more important than prevention before bad acts happen? And that's what we're going to talk about in this final panel. So it's my privilege to introduce again, John Farmer.